Hello, everyone. So we're here with Coach Brooks. Coach, how you doing today?
Christian, I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here.
um, so when did you realize coaching was something you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
I was probably at a really young age, actually. I remember playing back in the day. It was like, I think it was a Sega system. And I had a football game. And it was the first mode. There was like a coach mode where you could like call the plays and then the computer would run them. And I remember playing as a coach more than I played as working the guy with the ball. And so I remember just like even from a young age, that was something I always wanted to do. And I loved the competitiveness. I loved the strategy of it. I loved thinking about the X's and O's and how to manipulate matchups. And I just always have loved all that part of the game. And I think just learning more about the profession as I grew and played for some really good coaches, and had some great experiences and had some not so great experiences. And those things all help kind of shape your path. But it was something that was in, I think, from a very early age. I had a liking to that part of the game, coaching and adjustments and all those kinds of things that make it fun.
You're from Wyoming. If you were to use one word to describe a Wyoming basketball player, what would it be and why?
Well, there's not a lot of them out there. So sparse would be my first word. They're sparsely populated, Wyoming. There's not a lot of people in Wyoming to start with. To put it in perspective, there were 8 teams in our state tournament. There were 16 teams in the entire state in our class. So half the state made the state tournament. And so you had to travel 4 or 5 hours to a conference game in a bus one way. So it was a different, probably a different lifestyle of playing and growing up with sports than most people are used to in other states. But, I think there was probably versatile would be a good word, because there were a lot of other sports. You played everything in Wyoming. I mean, the schools were small, so you had to play football and basketball and track and baseball, whatever season it was, that's what you played. So
if you were to use one word to describe your coaching style, what would it be and why?
Man, one word. That's a tough one. I'd probably say adaptable. I think probably one of the biggest things that we try to do in our program is adapt to the talent and the players that we have. And some years you can select and choose players that fit your system beautifully, but other years, for instance, when I inherited our roster at Belmont, we inherited a really, really talented team who didn't necessarily fit the style I was used to coming from Depaul and open floor, fast pace. A lot of motion, a lot of quick tempo, quick decisions. And I came and inherited a roster that was, they weren't basketball robots, but about as close as you can be to a basketball robot. They were really good at what they did, but man, everything was programmed and everything was set. And so I had to adapt quickly to help those players have success that first year. And so I think I learned quickly as a head coach, I have to adapt to put our players in good positions to do what they do well. And some years, we always want the big athletic best players we can find, but we found ourselves with the roster full of 5'5" kids at guard, and we started 3 of them under 5'5" for the last couple of years. And so we had to adjust some things that we did defensively because of that. And but they're really good players. So I think being adaptable is probably the biggest thing that's helped us figure out a way to sustain success, which is a difficult thing to do. I think if we just did it the same way every year, we'd have run into trouble because our rosters change.
We were talking earlier before we got on about our love for basketball and watching the game. Today's young player, for what I've noticed, not really that much at all. The majority of kids that I talk to don't watch that much basketball. Maybe some NBA, but very little women's college basketball, and definitely even less WNBA ball. Why do you think that's the case? and how do we change it?
Yeah, I think you're right about it. I think I'm usually surprised when I talk to a player who actually follows the WNBA and can actually have a conversation about a player or a team or how teams play. Um, I think that's frustrating as a coach, especially when you're sitting here talking to young ladies who have a goal and aspiration to play in the WNBA, but they couldn't name 3 players who play like them in WNBA, and that's a confusing thing to me, especially with the availability of games. You can find a game anywhere. I mean, they're on Twitter, they're on everything right now, and it's really hard not to be able to watch it if you want to watch it. So I'm a little confused by it. I think I think there's just so much going on with these kids and their screen time. I'm not sure how many of them really sit down and study the game, and even to the point of watching the college programs that are recruiting them. I think I've been probably more often than not, players don't really study the system and the style that they're signing up for. And every coach in America is going to say they play fast and they play this great pace and this great style offense. And then when you study them, that's not the case for everyone. So I think players, I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if there's just, the attention spans. They don't have time to sit down and watch a whole game, or if they just, everything's a highlight reel and they see the snippets here and there. But, I'm hopeful that the women's game being more nationally prominent, being on the NCAA tournament, being on national TV, every game on national TV for the last couple of years, I feel like has helped, with the exposure of some college programs. And I'm hopeful that the WNBA, its continued growth, and hopefully there's expansion on the horizon and getting into some more markets that will maybe help that. But that's a confusing thing for me, for sure, Christian. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's something that it's rare to find a player who actually follows our professional league.
Our day's coming, Coach. Our day's coming. I promise you. As a coach, what are your non-negotiables?
Yeah, I think we talk about standards in our program. We have some standards that we try to live up to every day, and we kind of just talk about what that looks like in a day-to-day setting, whether it's a practice or a weight session, or maybe it's a walkthrough or a game day, whatever it is. And we talk about being selfless. The 3 most important things we talk about are being selfless, having discipline, and then toughness. And there's a lot that goes into all 3 of those things. They overlap each other, but the selflessness to us is just knowing that you're a part of something bigger than yourself, and that every person in our program, every person on our team has a responsibility to invest a part of themselves into what the team needs. And it's not always what's best for you, it's what's best for us. And I think that's a huge part of it. Then the discipline piece is just building positive habits, what you do every day, how you train when you're tired, how you push through adversity when stuff isn't good, just having the discipline to show up every day and do your work. And then the toughness is I think the tougher team usually wins the game when it's all equal at the end of the game. And that's something we preach all the time, that, we take quitting off the table. That's not an option when we step on the floor. So whatever time is left on the clock, we believe that we have to be the tougher team. And sometimes we're good enough, sometimes we're not. But I think being in that mindset that we're going to be the tougher team every day, that's helped us. And I think it's helped us down the stretch of some big games in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Your first big break in the coaching world was at Dickinson, NAIA, correct?
Yeah, and that's where I played. Yeah, so I played at Dickinson. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know the difference in levels. My good friend, she coaches at Fisk. She's a head coach there. And I tell people all the time, like, there's a lot of really, really good NAIA programs that can compete with some other level college programs Division II, Division III, maybe even some Division I schools for sure. Um, Tell me about your experience there. What made it make sense for you?
Yeah, well, I came from Wyoming, so it was a small. There was a small number of players. There's a small. First of all, there's one 4-year university in our entire state, the University of Wyoming. So for us to go somewhere other than a JUCO, we kind of had to go to our neighboring states. And Dickinson State was a 4-year school, NAIA school at the time. It still is. And I tell you, the ball there was really good. It's we had a really interesting collection of players, transfers from different places. There was in our league, there was a transfer from Minnesota who was on the Final Four team with Clem Haskins the year before, and Bobby Jackson. He was back up to Bobby Jackson, and then got in some trouble with the paper scandal that was trouble at Minnesota, and but he ended up in our league, and he was a great player. But I think there's always talent at those lower levels, and I do think there's a really important piece of like recruiting and people finding the right fits. I know we talked about this a little bit before we jumped on the podcast here, that players who find a good fit sometimes at a lower level can have a lot better experience than just going to a level and maybe not going to a good fit. And I think you saw that a lot in that NAIA setting, where there were some really good players and really good teams that could compete. We played Montana State, a Division I team, and played them to a 2-3 possession game at their place when I was a freshman. So, there was competitive teams at all levels, and I think there's really good players at all levels. So I think that opened my eyes. If you get the right fit, you get the right people, and you put them in the right positions, you can compete at a high level, even if you're not maybe resourced the same.
Mm-hmm. Next step, Barry University, Division II.
Yeah, so I graduated and went to get my master's degree at Barry University, Division II school, Miami Shores, Florida. And I got to do everything. I got to do film exchange. I got to do VCR to VCR to VCR, 5 VCRs connected to record VHS copies of our games to send out in FedEx envelopes to everyone who requested them. And remember doing mail outs and doing laundry at 2 a.m. while I'm working on a paper that's due the next day. And, everything in between. I got to recruit. I got to coach on the floor. I got to do everything. And I think after about a year of that, realizing that I loved it and I was doing all this stuff that I shouldn't have enjoyed, the stuff that no one wants to do in coaching, I was doing it and I still loved what I was doing. So I think that really solidified this being a career for me, something that I could really dive into and embrace and love, and got my hands in every part of the program. So really grateful for that experience, and wouldn't have had that had it not been a lower level.
We were talking before about some clinics and stuff you did in championship productions and stuff like that. Basketball nerd right here. I'm cool with it. You did a clinic for championship productions, all right? You did a segment on pivots. Some coaches say that's not that big of a deal. You can pivot off of both feet. It's not really going to change the game. But I remember watching one from Villanova with Jay Wright, and he was saying how pivoting, being able to, collect yourself on a proper pivot foot is such an edge offensively. What are your thoughts on that? How does it matter which pivot foot you catch the ball on? Is that something that you kind of ingrain within your offense on your team? So, and if you do, then what are some drills you may do every day to, enhance your skills with that?
Yeah, I think that some of that stuff is so individualized. When we bring players in, I think we try to really learn them before we try to give them directives about how we want stuff done. There's a player on our team, Tootie Jones. She's going to be a junior this year. She started for us as a freshman and a sophomore. One of the most competitive, toughest players I've ever coached. Loved this kid. She's a right-handed player that prefers to have her right foot as her pivot foot. So that's a little bit opposite of most righties. Most righties like that right foot to be their jab foot and their step foot. And it's just more, they step into their three that way, where they got that left foot planted and they step into their three. And Tootie's opposite. And about 2 weeks in, as we're trying to get her into that, put that left foot down, lock that foot on the floor and step into your shot with your right, and you watch her play, and she never does that. And it's not comfortable for her. It's not what she does. And so it's been something that we've worked with her to get her efficient with how she plays, but we also want her to be comfortable and not overly thinking about how she's going to have her feet set when she catches the ball. She does it. She has a great system for how she plays. And so now we're working with her to just utilize what she does well and then add layers to it, obviously. And so I think that this has evolved as I've coached. I think I started as a head coach. I started with trying to teach everyone to inside pivot 1-2 every catch, and so their inside foot is going to be their pivot foot, and they're stepping into their shots, and that sets up their shot fake crossover step game or their shot fake onside step, and working the different footwork from both ways. And I started, doing a lot of that, and lately I've been a lot more. I want them to be comfortable on their catches, and I want their feet to be ready, their hips to be ready, their hands to be ready on every catch. And if some of them get their body organized beautifully with a jump into the catch where both feet are on the floor, they jump the catch, or they jump stop the catch. Some love to 1-2. Some like to have that permanent pivot foot down, that left foot down. So I feel like I've adapted some of that, how we want to catch, based on who it is. And we've tried to give everyone a system to handle, have a solution, I guess, for whatever the defender is doing on their catch, whether they're heavily guarded, if they've got to sweep to the baseline, giving them those options. But I think the footwork is so important in basketball, whether it's the beginning of your dribble or the end of your dribble. Having the solutions at the end of your dribble, the exit plan, the escape plan to get out of trouble. I think that's a huge part of what we do with our program, is try to give our players solutions, that whenever they're stuck, how do you get unstuck? And pivoting and footwork is such a huge part of that.
First Division I assistant coaching job, Depaul, correct?
Yep.
Making a jump to that level is very hard. I mean, just, from Division III to Division II, Division II to Division I. It's hard. It's a journey, and you made a significant jump. Congratulations and much respect to you for that. Why did it make sense? How did it happen? Just tell us a little bit about that time and the process behind it.
Yeah, well, I worked. Coach Bruno at Depaul has an unbelievable summer camp that he runs and has run for 30 plus years, the Doug Bruno girls basketball camp. And while I was a GA at Barry University in Miami, I went up both summers. I was a grad assistant. I went up to Chicago and worked Coach Bruno's camps, and was there, spent 2 weeks each summer working his camp, and not ever thinking anything was going to come out of it other than I was getting to work camp and actually make a little money, because I starving artist in college, and he'd give me $200 check or something, whatever it was, but that was a lot of money to me at the time. And I just had an experience there where I worked really hard and kept my head down and tried to be the best camp coach I could. And out of that, when I graduated as a grad assistant, I finished my master's, and I was looking for jobs, and I was striking out right and left, and just applied for about everything that was open. I got a call from Coach Bruno, and he offered me a basketball operations job at Depaul. He just called me and offered me the job. It wasn't like I had to interview. It wasn't like I had to apply for it. And he has a philosophy, and I've taken this to heart, and I use it as well when I hire, that what you do every day is your resume. How you handle your business every day, that's your resume. That's your job interview. And I think how that experience of working his camps and learning from him, and just is getting to see how well he coached the details for, 8-year-olds all the way up to high school kids. It was a really cool experience. So I jumped all over that. It was a part-time job, no benefits, moved to Chicago for 10 grand a year and figure it out. And I did that. And then a year later, we had an assistant coach leave, and he bumped me up to an assistant because I worked hard as a basketball ops guy, doing all the stuff that no one wanted to do, and spending time and trying to do everything I could to help the program. And so I put in a few years of being a starving artist before getting a chance to actually be on the floor and coach. And so I was very appreciative of that opportunity. And 11 years later, I got a chance to jump to Belmont.
You mentioned the 11 years. For many young coaches, I think 11 years is a lot to spend in one program. Many young coaches, from what I know, look to get different looks at different programs to kind of, for lack of better terms, bolster their resume. It's pros and cons to that. So you're somebody that had great success, staying in your space and dominating your space. What do you think was the advantages of staying?
Well, I think I was in a program, an unbelievably successful program. And I think one of the hardest things to do in this profession is sustain success and have consistently good teams. And, I was with Coach Bruno for years when we were decimated by injuries and had 7 players, and we were still good. And we had teams where we had multiple WNBA draft picks, and we were great, and everything in between. And just to see how he handled and navigated the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of changing. The Big East used to be Louisville and Notre Dame and West Virginia and Connecticut and Syracuse, all these teams, and then 16, 17 team league that was as good a league there as there's ever been in women's basketball. Connecticut, like 2 teams out of our league would go to the Final Four every year. It was that good of a league. Going through that, then when the shift happened to the ACC and the splits of the conferences, however many years ago that was already, 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, whatever that was, seeing how he navigated that shift and that change. So I think being in the same place, it really allowed me to really formulate a plan and a system of how do you sustain success? What are the ways that, knowing what we've got coming back, knowing what, and just doing that over and over, and seeing classes of players from the time they're freshmen in high school to the time they graduate as a college player. And what does that transformation look like? And how can you project the next class? And how can you project the next player that reminds you of that player? And being at the same place and understanding that, I think really helped me have a pretty good vision of, when I get a coaching job, this is a really important thing to do, or this is a way that we need to evaluate players, or this is what we need to look at when we're making decisions about how we're going to schedule and who we're going to schedule. And so it was a really unbelievable experience. And I think there's a lot of coaches that say you need to go and learn from other people. And I tell you what, I learned from a lot of people. I learned from everyone we played against. But I got to learn from Coach Bruno every day about how to handle your business, treat people the right way, and sustain success. It's a really, really difficult recipe, but he's got it figured out.
Mm-hmm. I could be wrong, but most young assistants think after year 3, year 4, they're ready to kind of spread their wings, and get their own situation. You were there for 11 years. What was going on in your mind? Did you feel like you were ready in year 3, year 4? When did you know, like, okay, I'm ready. Now it's time to make that leap. Like, when did you know? When did he knew that you were ready? So just give us a bit of that, time in your life.
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever thought I was ready, to tell you the truth. I think I was a little bit always on the other end of that spectrum of, I still feel like I got so much more to learn, or I still don't feel equipped to do this, or, I'm not sure I'm ready to handle that situation. Or if I was a head coach, I'm not sure I would have been able to handle it like he did. I'm not sure that I was ready for that. I was always in that mindset of having so much more to learn. And, you know, 11 years at the end of my time, Coach Bruno actually made the phone call. He was at the Final Four in Dallas and was talking to someone who had a little insight into the Belmont job that just had opened. And he asked me if I was interested. And my first initial thought was, well, I don't know if I'm ready. That was my thought. And, but obviously after talking to him and, you know, kind of going through the process in my mind of always wanting to be a head coach, always wanting to run my own program, you know, let's try for it and see if we can get it. And, you know, I don't know how I got it. I'm still confused about how they offered me this job, but I'm not giving it back. I know that I'm running with it, but I'm not sure I was ever really, I never felt ready, but I'm not sure you're ever really ready for it either. I think there's just so much that you can't prepare for. And then once you get your opportunity, you just got to run with it and make a gazillion mistakes and correct them, and then try to figure it out the next time, do it better the next year. And I think that's the nature of the business. I still don't feel like I'm prepared. I mean, we're going into another season here. This is year 6 for me, and I still don't feel like I've got this figured out. I'm trying like crazy to get better and learn and adjust things and fix things. And how can we do this better? And I think that's what makes coaching so much fun too, is there's always a way to get better. It's always a way to improve.
You were under Coach Bruno, legendary coach in the girls basketball just in general. Actions and words are 2 different things. Tell me something you learned via observation, and tell me another thing you learned via conversation with Coach Bruno that really helped you grow as a coach.
I just say from observation, no one worked harder. No one had more energy than Coach Bruno. And that's in practice. It could be a 6 a.m. practice and he was ready to go. He was ready to rock. There was never a day that he wasn't on. And I just remember that from watching him. Like there were a lot of days I was like, man, I'm worn out, or off a recruiting trip, or maybe it was a long road trip and, you know, we'd come back and practice, or maybe it was film. And he was never worn out. He was always in it. He was always fully invested in the team and the team's improvement every day. And it was amazing to see that. There would be, I still remember a lot of days where we're practicing and it's like a long practice and he's just as in it and just as animated at the 2 hour 45 minute mark as he was at the first minute in the first drill. And that's a really hard thing to do. But I observed that from him. And I think I've really tried hard to emulate that I've got to be on every day for these players. They've got to understand that I'm fully in what we're doing, and there's not break time, there's not rest time. I'm in it. If they're practicing, I am locked into everything they're doing. And I think that's a hard thing to do. Everyone needs a little 5 minute catch your air time, and you walk around while the assistants are doing workouts. And I just remember him just going end to end, and it just never stopped. And that was a really, really eye-opening, cool thing to witness. And I think that's a big part of their success. Talking to Coach, we had so many conversations about basketball. And I think just talking to him, he always had a belief that our players were better than they probably were. And it just oozed out of him, that the confidence he had in our players. And I think that translated to their confidence in themselves. And, we would never be able to do what we did against the teams we played against with the players that we had if they didn't believe they were really good. And sometimes we had no business being in some games that we won, but our players believed that they were better than they were. And that came from Coach Bruno. And that was something that, as we talk about game plan, and like, he just had such a belief in the people that he was coaching. That was a really, really cool thing that I've tried really hard to emulate and try to provide for our players here at Belmont.
You then went on to become the head coach at Belmont. What made this space an ideal fit for you in the next part of your journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a school and a program I didn't know much about when I started the process, and then the more I started to learn about it, the more it appealed to me in a lot of ways. I think it's first of all, when you come visit, it's in this unbelievable, bustling, vibrant city. The city of Nashville is going crazy right now with people moving here, businesses, companies. It's electric right now in Nashville. Um, the campus is absolutely gorgeous. I still will stop and just look around when I'm walking around campus and just like breathe it in, because I get to work here every day. It's one of those kinds of feelings that I'm really grateful for the space that I get to call my work environment. It's a really, really cool spot. And after learning more about the program and learning more about the people that I'd be working for and working with, it really became evident that this is a place that not only could I start my head coaching journey, but I could see myself being here for a really long time. And I thought we were sitting on a gold mine when I took this job, that this was a sleeping giant in the basketball world. And since I've been here, I think that has just those thoughts and those feelings have just become bigger and more real. That this is a really, really good place to build a basketball powerhouse. And we've got unbelievable support from a new president. We've got a brand new practice facility. We have a move to the Missouri Valley Conference this year. I mean, all things, we won 2 NCAA tournament games the last 2 years. We won a game in the tournament. And when I took the job, that was so far from anyone's thoughts that could happen at Belmont. And now it's an expectation. So that's changed, that's shifted the thinking and the mindset. And I think there's a lot more room for growth. So Belmont appealed to me because I think the professional competitiveness, that I wanted to compete at a really high level, but I also wanted to do it with people and players that I believed in and that I enjoyed being around. We don't have to sell our souls for players here. We can take players who fit us and who are invested in how we want to handle our business. I don't have to treat them bad. We're in a place where we're supported and our players are supported in a lot of different ways, not just on the basketball court. And it's important to me. I've got 2 little boys and a family, and having a place where I feel like that's a healthy environment to raise my kids and they could be around, and that's a huge part of it as well. So there's just so much about Belmont that I love. I can talk about Belmont all day, so you better be careful.
You once said in the presser, let me get this right, I want to quote you properly. A lot of programs get wrapped up in goals, holistic team goals, but for us, it's more about the day-to-day. How do we live up to the standards today? Because today is the only day we have control over. So my question is, how do you win a day? What are some benchmarks that you have set that makes you feel like, you know what, today was a good day. We got better.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on some of those things a little bit earlier with the being selfless. Are we being selfless with our teammates and how we perform? And there's a lot that goes into that. The X's and O's of basketball. There's selflessness in every possession. Are you selfless enough to make a back cut and finish your cut, even though you're not going to get the ball? Or are you selfless enough to set great screens to help your teammates get open? The selflessness of understanding our coverages and communicating, opening your mouth when you're tired, like all those things. So one of the biggest things we do in our program, I think we get in the circle every day before practice, and we talk about how grateful we are for the opportunity we have to play. And I think COVID has helped crystallize this thinking for me and our team, that we never know when this is going to be taken from us. I mean, we're standing in this circle and we get to practice today. It is a good day. We get to play basketball today and play. That's a key word. Every player on our team fell in love with basketball when they were a little girl. Somewhere along their journey, they fell in love with this game. And somewhere along the way, a lot of these kids and a lot of these players, basketball becomes a chore and a job and something they got to check off their list that they have to do today. And I try to constantly remind our players, we get to play basketball today. So let's have joy. Let's have gratitude. Let's be grateful for this opportunity. Let's have fun with what we get to do today. But then let's do it at a really high level. Let's do it with selflessness. Let's have the discipline to do it right every time, to run our lanes, to have competitiveness, and then the toughness to finish plays and all those things that we talked about a little bit earlier. That's a win for us. And, we talk all the time when we play, we might get beat 20 and do everything how we want to do it, but the other team was better. And that happens. That happens in basketball. Some days that ball doesn't go in the basket. And as much as we as coaches feel like we have control over everything, there's a lot of things that we can't control in this game. But the things that we can control, if that's our focus, I think that's the priority for our program, that we focus on those things we can control, how our attitude, effort, energy, all those things. And if we do those every day, for the most part, scores take care of itself, and seasons take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Your team got hot late down the stretch, 11 wins down the stretch. The key to deep 20 runs and winning conference championships is like that last third of the year where you kind of like, you figured it out and now you're going. Now you're kind of going. And I thought you guys had that momentum late last year. What do you attribute to the success of that team near the end of the year? Like, what made you guys special?
Yeah, well, I think we have really tough players, really competitive players. And I think once we kind of turned the corner down the home stretch of the season, I think they all worked really hard to be on the same page with everything that we were doing. And not that they weren't before, but there was a lot of learning before. And I've purposely put our team in really difficult positions in the non-conference to play against tough, really hard games, usually on the road. And so sometimes that can beat you up as a team, and it can take a little time to, find your rhythm. It's not like we're just, blowing people out. We're going to have to play great. We still might get beat by 15, at Louisville or wherever we're playing. So I think those experiences early in the season, we knew it was going to be a challenge, and we maybe didn't handle it great, but so much credit to our players for just having the toughness to stay the course, to continue to work every day, to get a little bit better. And man, once the momentum is an amazing thing in a sport. And once you hit that stride and things start to click and people start to really crystallize what their role is and how they can help the team. I think that happened for us right around the time we started that win streak. And we obviously rode that momentum into the conference tournament and, into the NCAA tournament, and was a basket away from going to this first Sweet 16 in the history of the program. But it was a lot of credit to those players. I think one thing we try to do as a coaching staff is we try to do a really good job of taking care of their bodies. And I think we were fresh down the stretch, and that was a big part of it too. We'd have 45-minute practices often. That last month of the year, we wouldn't be on the floor long at all. There'd be days where we'd be off. We'd just shoot and just it'd be mental prep. Just getting repetition, nothing live, but just reps of footwork and catches and shoot shots and, beginning into dribble stuff. And it was really, I think, really important for our players that they felt good going down the stretch of the season. And I think that was the case this past year.
Mm-hmm. A couple more questions, Coach. I'm not going to hold you so much longer. It's easy to talk about the good, but let's take a second to talk about the bad. Tell me about a low point in your coaching career, a rough patch, and how you handle that situation. Because I think most coaches, when you first set out, you're not doing it for a lot of money, so it's tough. So tell me how you handled that. Like what came to pass? You're like, you know what? It's a fork in the road. I may go left, I may go right. Tell me about one of those moments and how you handled it.
Yeah, well, we had, for like these last few years, we've had a lot of those kinds of moments. COVID, to me, that was the hardest year I've ever had to deal with as a coach. And so much of the reason for that is we had a big freshman class. We had 5 freshmen that year, and they couldn't be around anyone in our program. You know, we were on the floor together for 2 hours. We had a social distance while they drank water. You know, there like so many crazy things that those young people had to deal with. And then after the practice was over, they would all go their separate ways, go to their dorms, and wouldn't be able to hang out together. And normally, if it was a tough practice, they'd all be in a locker room, and the older guys would grab the younger guys and say, "Oh, you think this is bad? Well, you should have been here when I was a freshman." And they could tell all those stories and get each other that camaraderie that happens with a team. And that never happened that year. And then we came back from Christmas, and we were playing pretty well before Christmas. We beat Auburn at Auburn, the first road win that we've had. Well, the second one since I'd been the coach there, against a Power 5 opponent. And it was a big win for us. And we come back, and half our team test positive for COVID when they get back from Christmas, and that led to 3 more players. And then we ended up having 2 players who didn't test positive that we're doing workouts with for 2 weeks, while everyone else is in isolation and literally isolated on campus. And we're doing daily Zoom meetings just to make sure they're doing okay, and dropping food off at their door. We can't see them. We can't talk to them. They can't do anything physically. Some of them are really sick. And there was a month-long break where we didn't play games. And then when we came back, those players, they weren't ready to play, but the toughness and the competitiveness of those young ladies, they put themselves on the floor, and they, in front of God and everyone, not ready. And we lost a couple games that we shouldn't have lost, but man, they gave everything they had. And that was one of the hardest stretches of my life of, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, and there were so many things that could have gone wrong. And then when we came back, we had to play 3 games a day, or 3 games a week, 1 off day. So every day that we had as a practice was a day before a game for the rest of the season. It was like an NBA schedule. It was an insane amount of games. And our players really brought me out of a really deep funk. I mean, I'm just in a horrible place. Just like, this is absolutely miserable. But being with them every day helps me. And, it was a really challenging time. And I think the thing that we just kept saying, and what kind of led to, what we do now before every practice, is once we got back, we loved every second we had on that basketball court, because that was the best part of our days for all of us. And we were so grateful for that opportunity. And then when we got to play, like, shoot, we'd rather play games and practice anyway. So let's play another game. Yeah, we don't have a scout. Our scouting reports were 2 words for each player. What hand do they shoot with? How do they dribble? Like, that's it. Like, what's our closeout assignment? We had nothing on the scouting reports. We just gave our players freedom to go play. And that was one of the most challenging yet rewarding stretches of my life as a coach. And then, fast forward, we win our first NCAA tournament game against Gonzaga in the bubble in San Antonio. And we're just with each other. And one of the most surreal moments, our players are looking up in the stands, waving at some of their parents who were able to make the trip. They can't even go hug their families after the first win in the NCAA tournament in the history of our program. And so there was always something tough. With every good thing that happened, there was always something tough we had to deal with. And that was, man, after that year, I needed about a 2-month long vacation. I think I still need it, because it's still wearing me out thinking about it. But man, just I guess that crystallized for me, having the right people in your program, having the right kind of people. You can overcome about anything that's in your path if you've got the right group and you're willing to put in the work.
What can we expect to see from this team? We're not talking wins, we're not talking losses. Like, if I were to come and watch Belmont play, and I got up from my seat and I started to walk to go back to my car, what is it do you want me to feel? What is it that you want me to, like, it's ingrained in my mind, like, Belmont is this?
Yeah, I think relentless would be a great word. I love that word. I love the thought of what it feels like to play against us, that you would say they're relentless. Like, it's just not fun to play against that team. They're relentless. Like, they do everything at a pace and in a way that just makes it hard. There's nothing easy when you play against Belmont. And that's kind of the mindset that we try to instill in our team. And then I think I would hope that people who watch us play say, man, I love how those guys play. They share the ball, they move the ball moves, and they play a great style. They play a fun style. And I think that's important for our game, that as coaches, we try to put a game and a product on a floor that people enjoy watching, that it's fun watching how we play, because these young ladies are so talented and they work so hard. And I think when we get people to come watch, I think there's a high likelihood that they'll want to come back, but we got to get them there, but we've got to do our job and play a good style and a fun style. And, I think that's something we work hard to do at Belmont.
Anything I missed you want to share? This is when you can tell us anything. I'm long-winded, I know. But if there's anything that you felt like I missed that you were like, I wish we talked about that in particular, whether it be books you like or, whatever. This is your time.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, I've grown so much more as a coach in these last 3 years, and really because of the COVID break. I just remember, I didn't have a beard. I didn't shave for 2 months, and all I did was study basketball. And that's like, we're basketball coaches, and how much of our day is studying basketball? It's very small. It's a very little percentage of our day usually, because there's so many other things on our plate, especially at the college level with recruiting. And, there's dinners and you got to meet with a booster, and you got to schedule something with someone on campus with the admissions up. There's so many different things on our plates. And I think often what has happened, especially with me, is the basketball piece has been put, well, we'll get to that later. And that COVID break, where I literally just dove into so many new basketball things. And I love basketball. I've fallen in love with basketball. I love it more now than I've ever loved it. I could watch basketball every second of every day and not get sick of it and like it even more. So it's an obsession, but I think the resources out there, you being one of them, there's so many different ways that you can grow in this profession. And, I feel like the more I have so many ways that I got to grow and get better. And there's so many resources out there for us to do that as coaches. So I would just, encourage everyone who's wanting to grow in this profession to take advantage of what you've got. You've got so many more resources now than I did when I was starting out. When I was starting out, I was fortunate to work for a coach who was a basketball encyclopedia, Coach Bruno. But everyone now has the opportunity to learn from any great coach. All they have to do is Google it or YouTube it, or, listen to all these podcasts that are available. There's video coaching, clinics online. There's so many ways for coaches to get better. I just encourage everyone to take advantage of those, and let's get our game better by becoming better coaches.
All right, Coach. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys soon. I'm going to watch some games this year.
Hey, you're the best, Christian. Appreciate all you do.
No problem. You have a good one.
You too.